Most people know Snoop Dogg and Suge Knight, but what most people never knew is that both of their names tell two completely different versions of the same story, and Snoop told his version on camera. Here's the part nobody covered. Snoop Dogg sat down on camera and said exactly why he walked away from death row. Not a rumor, not a secondhand account, his own words, in his own voice, on record. Most people know he left. Nobody covered what he actually said about the moment he made that decision. Nobody covered what he believed about the environment he was leaving. And nobody covered what Suge Knight said back on camera when he found out Snoop was telling that story publicly. You are about to hear both sides. Snoop's version, then Suge's version. By the end of this video, you will know exactly what happened between these two men, and you will have to decide for yourself who is telling the truth. The Choice Snoop Made. Death Row Records in 1995 was the most dangerous label in the music industry. Not dangerous like conflict, dangerous like consequences. People around that label were dying. People were going to prison, and anybody connected to Suge Knight was expected to ride with whatever side he was on. That included the East Coast-West Coast war. Biggie Smalls and Puffy were on the other side. Bad Boy Records, New York, and the tension between Death Row and Bad Boy was not just rap beef. It was the kind of tension that got people killed. Snoop Dogg was Death Row's biggest artist. He had just released Doggy Style in November 1993, one of the fastest-selling debut albums in history. He was the face of the label. Whatever Death Row said, the world assumed Snoop said it too. But Snoop was not saying it. In 1995, right in the middle of the war, Snoop sat down with Angie Martinez on Hot 97 in New York City. Hot 97 was the biggest hip-hop radio station in the country, and Snoop said something on air that nobody at Death Row expected him to say. He said he had no issues with Puffy and Biggie. He said he wanted to do a song with them. That statement did not go over well on the West Coast. You do not say that in the middle of a war. You do not say that when your label boss is Suge Knight. But Snoop said it anyway, because that is how he actually felt. Years later, in sitting down on Drink Champs, Snoop explained exactly why he said it, and he did not apologize for it. Snoop Dogg sat down on Drink Champs and said something most people missed. Here's exactly what he said about why he...
They tried to get me to not like Puffy and Biggie while we was in the middle of the Death Row Bad Boy feud, and I made a choice that I had no issues with them. That was the Angie Martinez interview back in the days that created havoc between me and Death Row because I stood on my values. Exactly.
Because when you said, I ain't got no issues,
I said I'd do a song. I want to do a song with them niggas. That's how I ended. I said I ain't got no issues with Puffy and Biggie. I want to do a song with them niggas.
Middle of the war.
In New York.
In New York.
On Hot 97.
What?
That was not a slip. That was not a mistake. Snoop made a deliberate choice, set in public, to separate himself from the Death Row position. He chose hip-hop over the war. He chose his own values over what was expected of him. And that choice had consequences. The question is, what happened next between Snoop and Suge? And did Suge ever find out exactly what Snoop was saying about him in those interviews? But here's what nobody is talking about. Snoop did not just walk away from Death Row quietly. He kept talking. In a separate interview, he sat down and put Suge Knight's name directly into his answer. And what he said about that private conversation between the two of them has never been the headline. That part of the story is coming, and it changes everything you just heard. The conversation nobody saw. Snoop Dogg officially left Death Row Records in 1996. The same year Tupac was shot in Las Vegas on September 7th, the same year the East Coast-West Coast war reached its most dangerous point. Snoop walked away from the biggest label on the West Coast and at the exact moment when leaving looked like disloyalty. But Snoop did not disappear. He did not go silent. He went to No Limit Records, he kept making music, and he kept talking. What most people did not know is that at some point after the split, Snoop and Suge sat down together. No cameras, no bodyguards, no media, just the two of them in a room having a direct conversation about what happened between them. Snoop described that meeting on camera. And the way he described it was not what most people expected to hear. He did not say it was tense. He did not say it was hostile. He said it was a love conversation. He said Suge loved him like he loved Suge. He said he loved everything Suge did for his music career, for believing in him, for giving him a voice when nobody else would. And he said Suge felt the same way about what Snoop built for Death Row. They talked about what it was, what it could be, and what it looked like when they were at each other versus when they were cool. And then they made a decision. In a separate interview, Snoop put Suge Knight's name directly into his answer. Listen to what he said. Snoop Dogg.
It was a love conversation because he loves me like I love him. I love everything he done for me as far as my music career, for believing in me and giving me a voice and, you know, just being there for me, just like he loved everything I did for him, building Death Row, building his brand. So we had conversations about what it was and what it could be and what it looks like when we at each other or when we cool with each other. So we made the business decision to be cool with each other because I don't hate him and he don't hate me.
A business decision, that is how Snoop described it. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, a business decision. Two men who built something together, who then went to war with each other publicly, sitting down in private and deciding it was smarter to be cool than to keep fighting. That sounds clean. That sounds resolved. That sounds like the story is over. But Suge Knight had a completely different version of what happened between them, and he was not keeping it private, but the story does not end there. Suge Knight sat down on camera and went in a completely different direction from everything Snoop just said. He did not talk about love conversations. He did not talk about business decisions. He talked about money, and he named Snoop directly. Stay with this, because what comes next is the part that nobody covers. Suge's version. While Snoop was describing love conversations and business decisions, Suge Knight was sitting down on camera telling a completely different story. Suge was not talking about closure. He was not talking about moving forward. He was talking about money. Specific money. Money he said he paid out of his own pocket. For Snoop Dogg, here is what Suge said happened. After Snoop caught his murder case in 1993, Suge Knight paid for his legal defense. He paid the DA. He paid the private investigator. He paid to get Johnny Cochran, one of the most expensive defense attorneys in American history, to represent people connected to Snoop's case. Suge claims he got a man named Malik, described as a good young man, to take the case for Snoop, to absorb the legal exposure so Snoop would not go to prison. And according to Suge, once that happened, Snoop never spoke to Malik again, never gave him $1, never acknowledged what that man gave up for him. Suge called that cowardice, on camera, by name. And then he said something that made the whole love conversation story fall apart. He said Snoop still owed him money, not old money, not forgotten money. Money Suge said he was still waiting to get back. Suge Knight was asked about Snoop leaving. He sat down on camera and gave his version of what happened. Here is what he said. While Snoop...
But back to my case, I'm in prison for making sure these dudes didn't go to prison. When you look at Snoop, you gotta look at it like this. All the money I paid to the DA, all the money I paid to the PI, after your own homie snitched on you. After I paid the money to Johnny Cochran to represent somebody, this person to represent somebody. Once I got him to take the case for you, you never spoke to that man again. You didn't give him $1. You burnt him. That's coward. That's bitch shit. You still owe me money.
Now here's the part nobody wants to say out loud. Both of these men sat down on camera. Both of them told their version, and the two versions do not match. Snoop said it was a love conversation, a business decision, two great minds choosing peace over conflict. Suge said Snoop burned the people who protected him, walked away without paying what he owed, and built a new version of death row without giving credit to the man who made it possible. One of them is leaving something out, and the truth is, both of them probably are, because that is how it works when two powerful men who built something together are trying to control how history remembers them. Neither one is going to give the other the full credit. Neither one is going to admit the full debt. What we know for certain is this. Snoop Dogg left death row in 1996. He built one of the longest careers in hip-hop history. And Suge Knight, the man who gave him that first platform, ended up in prison. The question is not who was right. The question is on what do you do with the version of the story that makes you look like you owe somebody something. And then there is the man Suge mentioned by name, Malik. The bodyguard who Suge claims took the legal case for Snoop, did his time, and never heard from Snoop again. That man's story has never been told on this channel. And what happened to him after that case connects directly to everything you just heard. This is the part that changes the whole. Snoop Dogg left Death Row Records in 1996, and every person involved has spent the years since then deciding which version of that story to tell. The truth is somewhere between a love conversation and an unpaid debt. Here's the question nobody can answer cleanly. When someone builds you from nothing and the relationship turns toxic, how much do you owe them for what they gave you before it went wrong?